Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the San Diego School of Creative and Performing Arts Salon series. For those of you that are out there this evening, I think you're in for a treat, a great discussion. We're going to do some deep diving into not just the professional entertainment industry. We're going to talk a little bit more about what it's like to be a BIPOC, somebody who is a person of color. Our guest tonight is somebody who's going to be able to illuminate a number of the different challenges that are out there for young people. And especially with our community at SCPA, it's important that students see themselves out there being successful, because every single student at SCPA is capable of having success in the arts. And you just need to see those examples for yourself. And tonight's guest is going to give you a wonderful view of what it's like to be out there and to be successful in the industry as a Filipina, as somebody
Yes.
who is just an amazing artist to begin with, and who is knocking the doors down and taking names. So I'd like to introduce to you musical theater dancer, singer extraordinaire, Miss J. Elaine Marcos.
Yay, thank you, thank you. Oh, I'm also Canadian as well. Add that into the mix.
Absolutely,
So
add that into the mix.
Yes.
We don't have a wall there,
No.
but maybe we need one. I don't know.
I might be able to let you in, but it's kind of like the Clubhouse app. You can message me and maybe I'll let you in.
Oh, there you go.
That's how it works.
So students, as we're going through, and parents, as we're going through tonight's discussion, if you've got any comments, if you've got any questions, please feel free to comment in the chat. Tonight's program will run about an hour, and if you don't make it tonight, people that are out there, tell your friends and family. You can always check us out at sdscpamainstage.com and check out the archive of this interview. But tonight's interview is very, very exciting for us, and I think it's a great opportunity for us, again, just to show the breadth of this industry called entertainment and the arts. It's remarkable. So Jay, Elaine, one of the things that we want to start with here is so important in laying the groundwork for tonight's conversation is you telling us a little bit about your story, how you got started, what inspired you the most, journey that you took.
When you said seeing yourself, and I started off as a dancer first. Your mom put you in lessons and you're just dancing along. And then sometimes you're doing a show in your school and all of a sudden you're just following the fun. And I was like, oh, this is fun. And this is fun. And then it wasn't until I saw Miss Saigon, the musical, that for me was the reason why I could see myself doing it, because I saw Filipinos on stage. So I thought, oh my goodness, first of all, this musical got me and I was bawling. But I saw a lot of Filipinos on stage. So that's when I identified with, oh, that could be something I can do. And I remember I had gone to an audition in Toronto. I was just a dancer first. And if anyone is out there have auditioned for, a musical for the first time, you're so excited, like, oh, this sounds exciting. But the day of, the 10 minutes before you walk into that wall, that place where it says auditions, and you're just shaking and you're like, what am I doing here? My mom took me to the Toronto auditions for Miss Saigon. And I remember we were both, my mom's not a stage mom. My mom's this really sweet nurse. My dad's a computer consultant. They're like, okay, you go do that thing. And I'm like, okay. And it was just this different world of, oh my, there were more Filipinos I've ever seen I grew up in a small town where I think it was like 3 Filipinos there. I was one of them. So I never really completely identified with being Filipino. I was just a Canadian gal and that was it. But then once I started this business, I realized kind of, oh, they're seeing me as a Filipina. So when I went in, I was really bad, really horrible. And then that's, I think, where I learned, oh, I have to learn how to sing, dance, and act. Or they thankfully liked my dancing, but they really said, we really like your type because you're right for the show. And I went, oh, type? okay. Then they said, really just keep on working on your singing and your acting. And when somebody gives me a note, I am like, got it. I'm crying over here because I didn't get it. But I go, okay, note taken. And that's when I took it a little bit more seriously in my last years in high school. And I'm sure there are a lot of students out there where, of course, they're having to decide the last year of their high school career. You need to decide what you want to do with your life right now. And I want you to get rid of any of the performing and completely change it up. I know you've been doing this for 4 years. Let's just change it up right now.
Right.
So I completely understand where if there's any student out there who's like, I've always loved to do this thing, I don't think it's a smart idea. I have to be an adult. And then all of a sudden, after 18, all the arts are supposed to go away and you're supposed to just throw it all away. And I'm really grateful that I just kept on following the fun in this. Like I found a school that was in New York. It was called the American Musical and Dramatic Academy. It was a 2-year conservatory. I auditioned, I got in, but I know schooling is expensive. So I decided to take a year off and I worked and to get money, then moved to New York to go to school. So there was always an element of like, if I'm going to do this, I made a decision at that moment. I have to do this. It's not about maybe I should or shouldn't. I kind of just felt I want to do Miss Saigon on Broadway. The way I think I'm going to get there is by going to this school. If I go to this school, I need to get the money. So I'm going to work. So I kind of just did the next step. I kind of followed that way. And I think a lot of students, I'm just kind of putting it out there, but there is that worry of, well, what happens after I graduate? And then when I graduate, what happens? What happens? There is so much uncertainty in this world. If this pandemic at all taught us that anything we plan, it's not going to happen. So what can we do today to move just slightly forward towards that thing? So that's what I always did. I just kind of followed the next step. School. I'll study hard at school. Then after that, thankfully, I got a job right away touring with a chorus line, playing the role of Connie Wong. Again, I was the right type for that.
Right.
That's kind of how I came from high school into the New York world.
That's awesome. I mean, a couple of the different things that you were pointing out there is the value of studying and moving forward step by step through the process. I think one of the things that that we jump to in society is exactly what you just said, which is high school has come and gone, so the arts must go away permanently. But I need to go and study something else so that I potentially could have a job doing that. And we don't think of the arts as, well, why don't I keep studying the arts? Because if I'm good at it, there's potential there too.
And there are other ways. There are schools that are really focused on the acting side of it, but then there are other schools where there is a general type of arts degree where you can still perform. But I believe that not everyone's going to be the person on stage. We need enough creatives everywhere. So we kind of limit the thinking initially of like, I want to be that actor. But then once people went to AMDA, sometimes they'd realize, oh my goodness, I'm really good at writing stuff. I'm really good at directing. But my favorite directors are those who started off as actors because they know how to speak to this. So there is some type of just follow the next thing. Maybe you'll still use that skill. But I've been in the business for 25 years, and the amount of things that I have done in terms of, yes, there's singing, dancing, acting, but then we have the voiceovers, and then we also have hosting a lot. I have to host a lot of things, or get the opportunity to. And it all started because I started off as a dancer. And I was never going to be a ballerina, but I knew to study ballet. Right. But then I ended up doing other things where I used the skills that I would get from the performing world. And the biggest thing that I equate like the arts to is the discipline that you get from the arts, especially dance, and I think since that's where I started off, there was no speaking. You're dancing and you don't speak. And
Right.
then all of a sudden I'm singing and I realize, oh, I have a voice and I have an opinion. And so as a dancer first, since I didn't speak, but I spoke with my body, I was very in tune in how energies are around me in terms of their body and also being able to convey information without saying any words. So I'd be able to pick up on that. And so I almost feel like that's a superpower when I go into
Right.
a room or go into, especially, we dressing rooms. That's another thing. You could just pick up in New York, there's a tiny dressing room and there's
Yeah.
like 5 of us girls or women there. And you're just like, okay, there's only so much energy that can be in this room. And there's always one who realizes that this is not their dressing room. There's 3 other people there.
Right.
But it's a type of awareness that is a huge skill. That's the reason why I feel thankful that I have worked, because I have the ability to support others. When it's my turn, I can speak up, but I also know now's not my time. I am here just to listen.
You
And
know,
that's what I got from the dance world.
well, yeah, the dance is, I mean, you're right in terms of discipline, the control that you have to learn, just the control, mind, body, spirit, the whole deal, right?
Yeah.
But I love what you just brought up too, Jay. You were talking about like just some of the dynamics that go into
Dynamics.
the daily, right? The daily life of a performer,
It has nothing to do with singing, dancing, or acting. When
right?
people audition, when I've been behind the table the first time, I was helping with a tour that was touring through Europe, and I remember we were auditioning people. They were talented, but we'd have to think, do I really want to hang out with this person for 8
Right.
hours in a rehearsal? Had nothing to do with their talent. It was because of the energy behind it, because you saw how they talked to the accompanist. You saw how they talked with, and it had nothing to do with they went to Juilliard. It had
Right.
everything to do with they made me feel good. They made me feel like I was a person. And so it's that type of thing. You realize you can have a superpower if you're just nice. Just
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah. And there so many commonalities come with being in the industry that are hard for people to wrap their heads around. Like, for example, and let's just jump into this part of it too, and that is, what's the daily routine of a Broadway performer, right?
All
What does
right.
that routine look like?
Okay. We need it because I'm like I have to wake up in the morning and I truly have to, and I learned this, the mind body connection. I have to focus on what I need to do that day, because a lot of times I am teaching or I'm speaking or I have my own auditions that I have to put together. I'm coaching others at the same time. I have my own coaching right after. So I flip flop between teaching, between doing my own self tapes for different mediums, for musical theater, for voiceovers. And then I'm also trying to find some moment to go out and bike. Just bike around, and just to get outside. So I do check in with myself in the very morning. In the morning, it's okay, I wake up, I have to do that 20 minutes of just, I gotta sit here, and before I look at the phone or anything, let me just meditate for a bit. Let me just try to figure out what is the important thing today. Not only the important thing today, but what will make me happy. Because sometimes they're not always the same thing. But I do have to find a moment where there is, what is the thing today that's going to make Elaine happy? Like, what is that one thing that I can get excited about? Every day is uncertain. So I really do just try to follow my gut in terms of, okay, what do I want to create? I just actually got a message from a friend of mine who he just, because we were creating things together. He's in New York and we were creating a lot of things together. One of the things we just finished. And so he's kind of like, he said this, I feel bummed right now. I feel really in a kind of funky place. I'm like, are you okay? He goes, yeah, I don't know. All my creativity was going to one place and I don't have that thing. And when students perform and they have their show and they have that high, and then it's that time in between shows that feel like years. And you feel like you're never going to do this again. You feel like you're never going to see your friends again. It's because we had a high. I'm just going to say it, like we lived it. So any of us performers, we know what that is. And that's what keeps me going. So I always have to think of what is that ultimate goal that I want to achieve. And whatever project that is, often it's a creative project. So I'm thinking, okay, do I have a deadline in place? One, to do that thing. I have this show that I'm doing in April. I'm like, oh, I still have to film it and da-da-da-da. But it's moving towards something that is just for me. And then I have auditions that I have to do that I've learned how to make the auditions an extension of my creativity, not just to fit the box, although some auditions really just like a Law and Order, you say the lines, you do it, that's it. But if a lot of times I am asked to, especially during pilot season, hey, yeah, we just want to see what you would do with this. Ooh, that's when I start going, okay, well, how can I add my recorder in here? Not that I would play it, but it's like, oh, I become this little kid and going, okay, well, where can I put my rubber chicken? And then where can I just become this creative thing. And then I'm back in that zone. Right. So you see those two, like, okay, well, I don't really want to do anything today. There's that part of me. Then there's the other part of me that's like this. Oh, what can I do next? I have those two going on. So in the morning, it's kind of like, I make them talk to each other like, hey, what should we do? We shouldn't be doing that. Well, maybe we should. It'll be fun. I kind of just, ladies, we're going to have today. What are we going to do today? And I try to figure it out. And then I have a list of creative endeavors. And I have supportive, amazing friends around me who love to create. And so I think it's so important with community to have someone that you call that goes, oh my goodness, Travis, I had this idea. And he always says, what? Go ahead. Uh-huh. Yes. It's that. Do you have that yes type of person in your life? Who is like, you're going to do a rubber chicken? You're going to sing outside in a sprinkler with a rubber chicken? Yeah. What time are you doing that? Like that kind of person. Right. Who just, because I know I have friends of mine who aren't in the business and they go, what are you doing again today? What's going on? And I'm like, I know you're judging me, but I can't talk about it. It just is. There's
an entrepreneurial spirit that comes naturally, I think, to a performer. It's something that we talk a little bit about at SCPA, especially in our arts management classes. But I also know that in musical theater, Roxanne Carrasco, Rox talks a lot about the day-to-day entrepreneurial businessship, right, of the artist. It's not just everything that is on stage. It's all the other things that you have to be doing consistently every single day, creating those routines for yourself, right? So that you're ready when it's time to walk in for an audition or walk through the door.
That's absolutely it. There is, that entrepreneurial spirit of, I remember hearing someone say like, you got to sell yourself. You have to sell yourself your dream. So that's what we do in auditions is we're selling ourselves technically. Right. But if we're apologizing for ourselves while we're selling, think about someone trying to sell you something and they're like, well, it's not very good.
Right.
Like, can you please take it? I'm like, but someone just came in and they like think their cake is amazing. I'm probably going to go with the cake, even though they're just because they're so confident about it. So there's a part of it to go like, no, this is a really good cake. And I don't want to be schmoozy with it or anything, but we have to sell ourselves on it. I'm like, no, I'm good. Like, you have to say like, no, I'm really great at what I do. I don't know what you do, but I'm great at what I do. And then going into the room going, Okay, so I'm going to be generous with my gifts with you all. I'm going to show you what I do. If you want it, that's great. But if you don't, I'll see you later. Thank you. Great. Bye. It's
Right.
less, it's less graspy. It's, hey, do you want this? But if not, I know somebody will, and I'm not going to stop making this. Okay, gotta go. Bye. There's that.
Exactly. And I think, like you're like bringing up some of the old feels that I had when I was an actor, because you were talking about, the highs and the lows, right? And they're so extreme, because when you're in a show and you're riding that wave of that show, you're on a high, right? And then you're coming out the stage door and there's people out there waiting for you, right? And it is so exciting. And then the show closes and everybody backstage is talking about, well, what is the next gig? What is the next gig? What are you doing next? What are you doing next? What are you doing next?
Oh,
Right? And then in some cases, you're in that place of, well, I'm going to take a day or two to myself, but then I'm going to get back to the gym. I'm going to start looking at any new auditions that are coming up. I'm going to check in with the agent. I'm going to see if there's commercial work, if there's film, if there's television, right? I'm going to check all of the periodicals that are out there. I'm going to get to the gym. I'm going to make sure that, I'm eating right again. And I'm going to review my audition material. I might have to look at maybe working some new pieces into
yeah.
my audition stuff. So,
It's
I mean,
New Year's
there's so much.
after every show. When New Year's comes around, I was like, sometimes I have a New Year's a couple times a year because if a show closes, like you said, there's this energy at the very end of what's next, and that's why
Right.
I think it's also because I've had the luxury, but also when I'm in a show, I know when it's going to close because I can feel it. You see the audience and you hear it.
Right.
So always when I'm working, I'm always auditioning and I'm I'm not just sitting back. I'm like, because I've never really had a true like Book of Mormon, Hamilton type of show thing. Like Annie lasted for a while, of course I did, but nothing in comparison to the long running shows. So I have been so used to you do the job. I don't take it for granted because I know it could end in a second. So I have to be very aware of keeping my eye on what is next, in addition to our choreographers and directors, and they work all the time. Like they're always working on another project. And what they really would like to do is always have somebody that they worked with before. And so there is that when you get a show, you never stop not just networking, but if you're good at what you do, whenever that person that you're working with might ever need this service, just know that you can put it out there. Like by putting yourself out there and letting people know what you are doing is only to help them. That's what I've started to think of, especially since I moved here from New York. In New York, I didn't have to do as much hustle because in New York, they would draw from the Broadway world.
Right.
If you're in a Broadway show, all the casting directors, and there were only so many, they would always see the shows. So they would already know you in a sense because they saw you on stage. And then you move to LA, where if someone does Disney shows, I don't know if they even watch any sci-fi shows. So what if I have an amazing sci-fi show and I'm going in for a Disney thing? They're like, sorry, I don't know who you are, because there's all these other than the Oscar world where they draw from. But
Right.
it is really important to not only know that you do good work to sell yourself, but to remind people that you're here in whatever way. And that's what social media is. I feel like if you don't let people know what you do, they can't know. They won't know.
Right.
So it is important to hold on to your gifts and talents and know that it's going to feel a little gross. It's going to feel a little like me. But it is important because at the end of the day, when you are working, it'll be because someone goes, oh, I just saw your thing and you just came to mind. We want those moments. Oh, I was
Right.
just thinking of you. And the easy way for them to think of you is to create a relationship, even with industry when they're not looking for anybody per se, because you're just a person.
Right.
Yeah.
It's interesting because, I think every actor has experienced, every performer I think has experienced at some point family or friends or someone saying, "Hey, how come it's always about you? Why is it always about you?" Right? And this is where the entrepreneur comes in, because I stopped in the middle of my career. I would stop and go, "It has to be about me." Do you know what I mean? If
Yes.
it's not about me, then I don't know what my product is. So I am my own product. So whatever I'm working on, whatever I'm trying to do, whoever I want, whoever I'm trying to meet, it is going to be about me and my next steps. Now, it's not going to be inauthentic, right? I don't want it to come off as cheesy, right? It's authentic and it's legitimate, but it's also my ears, my eyes and ears all have to be open and my senses have to be open 24/7. I got to be on.
Yeah, and there is a thing about the authenticity. When you're first starting out, you don't know what it is yet. And
Right.
sometimes I think, because when I think of after so many years of auditioning, and I start doing really, like I said, this chicken has been in my audition so many times, I can't even tell you. But there is a reputation of when they don't know, they haven't found the comedic actress for a show, a lot of times they'll say, just bring in Elaine. We'll see what she does. I don't know. And I'll be like, I don't know what's going to happen. We'll see. Like I bring in these crazy things. But the thing is that it's not just a gimmick. It is because it is authentically me. But I only realized that after I had done it a couple times or even failed in audition rooms of like, oh, that was horrible. But I'm still, for some reason, just going to always do that. I'm still going to still be this kind of bit of a mess, but thankfully I have some discipline behind me that I won't be too crazy, but there is authenticity, but you can't really find it until you put yourself out there and realize that you think something's a failure, but then you realize if I keep on doing that thing, other than if it's a wrong note,
Right.
but if you are doing things that people are like, you're always so funny in this, or you're so great at doing this or that, that's when you can start finding out who you are in these audition rooms or just by doing material or just working on it more.
Rox had sent us in a question, and one of the things that she had wanted to ask you, and she's not here this evening, guys. Roxanne Carrasco, chair of our theater department, and just one of our creative, extraordinarily amazing people on our campus. She's a little under the weather, so she's not in part of the interview tonight. But there's two questions that I think that she wrote that I thought that were really powerful. The first one was the importance of the training to so that the discipline that we keep referencing and that we keep talking about, so that we're in that place of when I walk into a room, I can take any kind of direction.
Yeah.
I'm going to be in the know on the language, the vernacular of the business, right? And so, can you talk a little bit just about that training
Hmm.
aspect and how important that is to?
Yes. You know what? When I first when Roxanne reached out, I was like, wait a second. Oh, I know that name. That's how the business is that, and then I realized, oh my goodness, wait, I think she did curtains or she did this, and then I start realizing that we were in the business together at the same time, and I kind of knew about her because she was working, and that's
Right.
kind of how the business is. And when I think about her, even though I don't specifically remember when like a certain time or place, when someone says your name, you want it to resonate with, oh my God, Richard, I totally talked with, oh, so good. Yeah. Like
Right.
that. Roxanne, oh no, yeah, I totally saw her. And oh, wait a second. And she did a chorus line and like that type of excitement. What you never want is, oh yeah, I work with Jay.
Right.
Like, like
Right.
I always think of that when, like you said about being on, like not so much like I'm presentational, but there is, how can I make sure that there is an energy behind everything that I do that is just me. And so when I think of somebody ever saying my name or do you know Jaylane, I just want to make sure that there is like oh yeah, oh my goodness, or she's out there, but I love her. Like that kind of,
Right.
I'd rather
Right.
that. So I just wanted to mention that because that's how small the business is. And it had nothing to do with training. It was the reputation of how you work in the room.
That's right. And I think, but I do think that a lot of that comes from the training aspect, because if you're trying to pull one over on somebody, right? You
Mm-hmm.
don't have the talent to be in the room, but they're going to see right through that,
Oh my goodness.
right?
It,
And
yeah,
and I think
yeah.
you can have those relationships because of the confidence of the training, and I think that's the part where I think that students really need to hear. It's not a free for all, right? You
Mm-hmm.
do want to be trained to a level of
There's a minimum. Yeah.
right. There is a minimum. So I mean, like did go to AMDA, correct?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So what was that like?
It
What is
was
AMDA?
so fast that I'm so grateful that because I went to the 2-year conservatory. And so it was singing, dancing, and acting. I didn't take the summer off. So it was actually like 18 months. And thankfully, the classes were really small, especially if you start in the spring. And then if you're studying during summer, the classes are even smaller at the time. And I think it still is today because a lot of people take the time off. But it really taught me, one, how New York works, like how the system is. And because I was training with people who are in the business, they'd be able to show me what is going on. So the element of like, what is it like? What happens? I would have like I would just do mock auditions at AMDA. Like sometimes they would have me come back and do mock auditions, but I would give them information that is happening at this very moment of, okay, because I remember they were auditioning for Miss Saigon one time that I was the revival of it, and I was teaching a class. And I really, because I just feel like I want to help, because if there's anyone who auditioned for Miss Saigon, I auditioned for that for 4 years and finally got in. It took me a little while to get into that show. But then I
Yeah,
also realized there's only, as you know, in the business, there's only so many tracks. Even though there may be 5 girls, one has to do this, one has to do that.
that's right.
But then there was a strong dancer track, and that girl never left. And then finally she did. But I was like, thank you. She wanted to go on the tour, and then I replaced her in New York. But
Right on.
the it taught me how New York worked. And oh, what I said to the students there were a couple actually students who are graduating from AMDA, and I just said, here's my email. You call me that if you have any questions or anything. And they would ask me questions of like, should I wear this or should I wear that? And I was like, okay, show me your shoes. What are you doing? Okay, use those shoes. When you're dancing, wear these shoes, wear this, that, because they just had these questions. And so it's really helpful to be at a school where the people who are working right now are giving you information that you can apply in this very moment.
Right.
So that's what I felt like I was learning. But then it made me realize that the training never ends, because I was still uncomfortable with my voice, and many times I still get uncomfortable. So of course I'm still in my own lessons, because I've learned how I pick up music, and I know how it is for me, and I need to do it on my own, but I also need help. I'm always needing help in different areas. So AMDA taught me not only how New York works, how to audition, but then also, since they showed me, if anything you really learn at AMDA is how to audition. And because I learned how to do it, I learned the rules and I break them so horribly, Richard. I am breaking them so badly.
Yeah.
And I'm doing things now that I would never say to do. But I want to show people that because I'm still authentically me, and ultimately, lately when I got a message from a casting director who said, we watch so many tapes all the time, and just all your tapes are always consistently you. And that's whether or not I book it. And thankfully I did. But like, even when I don't, they're like, they know what they get with me. They get the
That's right.
professionalism, but they get this entertainment because we are entertainers. And for a moment there too, I used to do stand up really like just to get a just to get a high from like, haha. But stand up and auditioning is very similar. They're very similar because within seconds, you have to have the audience or casting director, they have to feel comfortable. And if they're in a relaxed state of like, oh, okay, this is good. I feel comfortable watching this person. There's that same element that I use in my auditions where I push the boundaries, but I make sure that they know that I'm confident and they're safe. And then I've worked on material so much that I allow the improv element to come into play. And that's where training, I say improv is huge. Even though singing, dancing, and acting, the improv is in the acting part, but improv is about listening and reacting in the moment. And as much as I'm talking right now and I'm not listening to you, there is that element. I'm like, talk. Everyone should listen. And I'm talking more than you are. But there is that element of if you listen, you can react honestly. And there's nothing like being in the moment. And that's what theater is. It's not just going quickly. It's acknowledging the moments that happen in an audition setting.
Right. And I think learning to get past those no's, because you're going to get told no more than you get told yes.
Yeah.
But learning to get past the no's in the sense that the no's not a stopping point, right? You in your audition, you may have shown a producer, a director, a group of investors, you may have shown somebody something that they want for something else, not this, right?
Yeah.
You may not book this gig, but the phone might ring in a couple of weeks because of what you brought into the room.
Yeah, that's actually when I think of my career, and I would go to dance calls and I'd be at the very end. And if anyone has not seen the documentary Every Little Step, definitely watch it because it shows you the casting process for the revival of A Chorus Line. And it just shows you like, that's a New York audition. But it's the process of, you just do it. And you will see in that documentary people who get cut,
Right.
not for the show. One of them is Andy Blankenbuehler, the choreographer for Hamilton, choreographer for In the Heights. And you're like, oh no, he got cut. It had nothing to do with his talent. So when you see these people cut, you're like, yeah. And it's kind of great to hear. I know that's why I listen to podcasts a lot. And whoever's tuning in here, I'm sure they understand. When you hear people's stories of like, yeah, I didn't get that, but I just kept on going. It hurt. A lot of times it hurts. I'll be crying on the ground over there. But there's a part I go through this. I go, oh, that hurts. Are you kidding me? Really?
Yeah.
Really?
I can relate to that.
And then it goes, I can't wait till you see, it just morphs into this. Like I use that, but I cannot just pass up that crying. It is upsetting. And the reason why I get so upset is because I don't go 100%, I go 1,000%.
Right.
And you know what? That's just part of it. But when some people are like dabbling because they don't, just like you would in a relationship, like I'm just going to dabble so I don't get hurt. I get hurt all the time and it hurts.
What a great point, man. What a great point. Because you're throwing your entire person into
hurts.
it. Yeah, it's going to hurt, man.
It hurts. Like that thought of it right now. But when you do, all I need is one network, one this, one that, just for today. And then let's keep going. Whatever win you can get for the day. A lot of people are auditioning. If you went to an audition and you did the audition, yes, you won today. Because how many people decide not to? How many people decide, I signed up, but I'm not going to go. Or they got overwhelmed. But if students are overwhelmed and then they figure out the process for the first time and then they do it, that is a win. So anytime there's auditions, it is hard to do something for the first time, but
Yeah.
know that you'll never have to do it for the first time ever again. And it'll just get better. But being curious, just stay curious and open to whatever happens. I'm not a professional at this. I'm going to do my best. I don't know, but I'm just going to dive in. It's that, yes, sure, here I go kind of attitude.
So I'm going to give you a double pronged question. Okay. I'm going to ask two things simultaneously, and you, in your inimitable way, take us down the journey. Roxy had put together a couple of different questions. I'm going to put them together. One is the challenges that you faced coming from Toronto into the
Yeah.
United States, right?
Yeah.
And then, and two things that we just don't think about: you being a female,
Yeah.
and then being Filipino,
I
right?
know.
And then, in addition to that, getting cast in a chorus line, and then eventually taking on the role of Val.
Yeah, you're mentioning it right now, and my mind is going, how did I become the first Asian Val after they've been seeing me as Connie Wong for 20 years?
So
I was like, what?
breaking down those walls and facing those challenges. And Jay, can you talk a little bit about all of that?
One of the questions that I would often get is, how many roles did you not get because you were Filipino or a person of color? And I had a hard time answering it, because then I realized I really don't live there in my head. If I counted, there's a shift of focus where it goes, oh gosh, yeah, I didn't get, it's like that doesn't, if that describes where I live in my head, that I don't, sometimes those negative thoughts come in, but I just felt like that question itself was already, oh, I don't think I ever phrase it that way. I think, how many, I don't, I, how many shows did I get? Or I don't know, my mind won't compute. It will not go there. Um, so so going to the question of first being Canadian, I always thought, well, how am I going to get to the States? And there was the school, so I took that one step. I got a visa to study school at school in AMDA, but then after I got a job to tour, and as an international student from Canada, you only get a year to work, and then you just have to figure it out. And somehow I thankfully got a job, but then I kind of figured out that if I joined a union, I had to do all these things, but it's possible. I think what I always kept in my mind is, I don't know the how. I don't know the how, but it's possible. The how is going to have to show up, but I know this is what I want. So eventually I was able to do it. I was able to get the show. And then also, being Filipino, like I said, growing up, I didn't really speak the language. I didn't really embrace it until I did Miss Saigon. And I was in a cast where I was not the only Asian person. And it felt like a wonderful family. And because I was there with other performers, just like anything, surrounding yourself with good people, I started learning more about the business. Because if it was the first day I was there, I started learning from others. And so wherever anyone is, if there is anyone ahead of them, pick their brain. Maybe they're a mentor of yours. It's amazing. The students have you and Roxanne, like, wealth of knowledge. So I think I just kind of asked the right questions and kept moving forward. Now, going to the Val thing, even before the Val part, when I was closing a show called Priscilla, Queen of the Desert,
Oh my
I
gosh.
I
Great
was
show.
saying this Filipina, feisty, they called her this feisty Filipino woman. I never knew in my life that I would be on stage speaking in Tagalog. When I got the sides, I was like, I'm going to now have to learn the language. But she was fun and feisty, and she can sing and do all that stuff. So it was totally in what I did. It was almost like when they gave me the sides, I was like, okay, next, I'm ready to go, whatever. whatever you
Yeah.
want me to do, because I was just so excited about it. But that was one of the roles where I never thought in my life that I'd be playing a Filipina. Okay, so the show closed. Annie, they were auditioning for Annie, and they were looking for a Lily St. Regis, and I wasn't going to go out for it. But then the casting director called my agent and said, we still haven't found our Lily St. Regis. Is Elaine is she interested in coming in? I was like, of course I'd be interested in coming in, but you know how I look like, right? Like, right? I just,
Right.
So I just approached it how I normally do, with fun. How can I make this character fun? And yes, I studied how Bernadette did it and Kristen Chenoweth, but I kind of I have this character, and I decided to go into the audition and do the character as Lily St. Regis in the way that I would do it. And I guess because it was authentic, and at one point I might have, like, I might have had a red wig and I sang something, but my point is, I really didn't think I was right for it. But I thought, it's not my job to not cast or cast myself. It's my job to go in. But it's also my job to, I say, entertain.
To be honest with yourself too, right?
Yeah, I really thought, I was like, what am I doing? I can't be going in. And when I left the audition room, and I got a call later, and my agent was like, hey, what did you just do in the room? Because I did change the lyrics to a song, and you should never do that in front of Charles Strauss, but that happened. It happened. And James Lapine was always like, I like you. I like it. Like, just question mark.
Yeah,
but
sometimes those risks pay off, right?
Those risks. And then I wanted to talk back to where you were saying the seeds that are planted. I was a dancer first, and I'd always go to dance calls. I never danced once for the Annie audition. I just went in, sang, did my little shtick. And Andy Blankenbuehler actually is the choreographer, but he wasn't there that day. And I never went to any dance call. But because I used to take his class back in that day, and because thankfully I'm in the business, he was like, oh no, I know her. Oh yeah. Like, I thought, I couldn't believe I'm so used to jumping through hoops. But because I always just did the work years ago, and I consistently did it, there's that thing of it adds up. The bamboo does grow. So you plant those seeds. And so I don't want anyone to ever say, well, that was a waste. Nothing is a waste. If you ever work on a monologue and you never use that monologue again, the process that you went in to put that together, done. It is a check mark, and that's a win. And now you know how to do that. So I always love that planting of the seeds. So, okay, so then eventually I did get Lily St. Regis. And the amount of messages I got from friends, there was a relief of like, oh my goodness, they see you. And I went, I never thought of it as that. They saw me for being a singer, a dancer, as not just Filipino. And there was like a nice little win amongst us of like just being recognized and being enough. Like, I'm enough. I work so hard because I always feel like there's going to be like, if we go this direction, I always felt like I was the wild card. If we go with the wild card, I don't know, she's going to have to be extra good. But if we go with what we're used to, this is a chance. We're taking a chance on this.
One of my idols who passed away early during COVID, Diane Rodriguez, who is just like an icon, right? Diane, she always used to tell me when I was younger, we can't afford to be good. We must be great.
That's it. That is absolutely it. I'll be honest right away, is what bothers me the most, and nothing really bothers me, but if I go anywhere, it's like, did someone just call me lazy? Did someone just call me lazy? That is the ultimate of, I might not be the best, but I'm going to work hard. I'm working really hard.
Yeah.
So it's, that will never be said with me. Like it, and look, I will be whatever it is that day. I'm giving you as much as I can. But being lazy is, it just, I feel like I'm cheating on myself. I'm cheating on everybody else. It just is a horrible feeling. So when you say being better, it is nothing against anybody. It's just I never want to be lazy.
Yeah. Yeah. And she, and when it comes to issues of ethnicity and race, I remember doing a production of Macbeth, and I was doing it for a major regional theater company, and we got stellar reviews. Right, everything was coming in. People were loving the show, and I was playing Macduff. It was the second time that I essayed the role, but there were calls coming in from the subscriber base saying, "You put a Mexican in the role of Macduff," and they were sharing that with me. And I think the expectation was somehow that there was some sensitivity around it. I wasn't sensitive at all. I could have cared less.
Yeah.
My thought was, you know what? I'm knocking this role out of the park. I know where I stand with my performance. If somebody's going to go to that place, shame on them.
Yeah,
But
it's
me, I'm not going
that
to let
has
it bother
nothing to do
me.
with me. We're storytellers,
Right.
we just are storytellers. And when I was doing Val, and when I hit the line, it was the way I looked and not the fan kicks. That still hurts me right now because I think about it. Like that's why I think I couldn't answer the question, how many roles did you get because did not get? Because I can't go there.
Right.
But when I said that line, it was the way I looked and not the fan kicks because Val's talking about why she didn't get jobs. That is my own personal story that I'm putting on there. It's not because I'm this or my that. It's honestly the way I looked and not the fan kicks. So that always brought Val to me. It grounded me and made me realize I can say these words because all of us have always felt that somebody else is judged us a certain way. So this role does not need to be a blonde, does not
Right.
need to be. So
Right.
I'm telling the story, it's coming from my point of view, and that is enough. Am I telling you the story? Then that's fine. I always think about what is the story? What is the purpose here? It's not just a it's not just the outside. And just to narrow it down to just like a Mexican playing, I'm like, dude, you're missing
Right.
a lot of the elements in there.
What an ignorant statement, right? I mean, it's just
Yeah,
so silly.
yeah.
I have to say, a chorus line, which you and Roxy have in common. I had never, I had seen the film and I'd seen it on stage, and I didn't care. We did it at SCPA, and Rox directed it. That version of that production changed my life, completely changed my life. I saw each and every single one of those characters so clearly. They were so beautifully portrayed. The direction on it was impeccable. But the character that I could not take my eyes off of was Val. And it wasn't just the person playing the role of Val, it was the character of Val. Um, what an intense journey. All of them have
Yeah.
intense journeys. But Val, how did Val touch you?
Um, because I had seen it on the line, because I used to be Connie and I'd be watching the Val over here, you have this perception. First of all, the music is a lot harder than I thought. The intervals
Right.
in this. I was like, Marvin Hamlish, you are amazing. Sometimes you're singing a song and you're like, oh, that's hard. But I realized that I'd seen it played very, and no judgment on anyone else, but played it very one note
Right.
of this is a thing. And also, it's a very long joke. It's a very long joke, and it's already set up, and everyone knows it. So it really is, as a comedian standpoint, you're like, you never want the audience ahead of you. And they're like, oh, this is Dance 10 looks great. So grounding it in the reality, and also Bjork would always teach us about the relationships on that line. Who are your friends? Who are the people that you don't like? Who are the people that you admire? And there was always this typical thing about Val and Sheila, of course, they have that moment, and
Right.
everyone loves to like, oh, they hate each other, they hate each other. But what if there was a world where sometimes, when you hate somebody, it's because you admire them so much.
Right.
So I love being able to play seeing Val and as much seeing Sheila as much as she technically disliked me, but it was like kind of like a puppy dog of like, oh, I love being around you. Hi, hi, and she's like, will you get away? But there was this like, I as Val had an admiration for this woman who's been in the business for so long, and you know how when we see people, we might not like them, but deep down they're like, oh, they're good. So it was being able to have relationships with everybody on the line in a different perspective from Connie, but Val in that state. So I felt like I was able to really, especially doing the show so many times, I'm able to not have to think about the moves or anything like that anymore. It's about the relationships in the moment of who, what, where, and also, it doesn't take long for an actor to get into a situation where, God, I hope I get it. That comes through my head every day. So it
Right.
really does not take like, oh, now I'm in Siam and now I have to be in. No, I'm at an audition and I'm nervous and I'm intimidated, and you just play the reality of it there. That is kind of juicy and wonderful because it's what
I
we
think
go
what
through.
I admire of every single one of those characters is they step towards the the thing that is being the label that is trying to be placed upon them, and they absolutely obliterate the stereotype.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? And with Val in particular, I know that there was a question about, well, how are young audiences going to take this very long joke? The reality is that our young audience members understood the ownership of it and the silliness of these the put upon,
yeah.
sentiments that
Mhm.
people spit at each of us, and instead overcame it, transcended it, and made it a celebration. And I think
Yeah.
that that's incredibly powerful.
Yeah, there is that celebration of this is what I went through, but this is where I am right now. Did you get what you wanted? And she literally walks off selling herself like, "Go, sold, done.
That's right.
I'm done.
That's right.
Take it or leave it."
And it
And
makes you weep.
yeah, and everybody on that line, that's what I love about the show is because you take what is normally, at the very end where everyone's one, we are all individuals. And the first time that we as dancers got to speak and have a voice, and that's why Byork and Plus and Bob Avian were so adamant about people bringing themselves to these roles. They're like, please make sure that you bring you because that's what the show is about
Right.
until one. Until one, where it's just we're void of any individual. But before that, you give yourself permission to be you in that moment.
It's genius.
Yeah,
It's absolutely genius.
I
Hey,
know.
listen, Jay, we're at the end of our session here. We're actually over. I could talk to you all night. This has been so illuminating. I hope anybody who's been listening out there, you've been given a treat. And if folks haven't listened, please come back and watch this episode. Go to sdscpamainstage.com, click on the Salon series. The archive is down at the bottom of the page. I need to give a shout out to the Friends of SCPA. Friends of SCPA, thank you so much for underwriting our ability to do this program. And I want to just let everybody know that coming up next week on February the 8th, our students are going to debut their own student series called The Surface. We did a dress rehearsal yesterday, and oh my goodness, is everyone in for a treat. These guys, the ladies and gentlemen that are involved in this production, are absolutely thrilling. And it's going to take off like gangbusters. And it's about students. It's for students, developed by students, and just an exciting brand new series, again, called The Surface. Check it out Monday, February the 8th at 5 p.m. I want to say a huge, huge thank you to Elaine Marcos, our special guest this evening. What a treat to be able to spend this time with you.
Oh, thank you. You're awesome. Everything you do at that school has so much integrity and so much passion that I'm so excited to be able to just share any bits of information.
Well, we're going to keep you coming back for sure. I mean, you've brought so much to our kids. You've brought so much to our community, and we want to continue to take advantage of all of your gifts.
I just want everyone to keep on going, just moving forward, cry on the floor, but keep on going, cry on the floor, and then keep on going.
There's your best advice for every single kid out there. That's awesome.
Surround yourself with good people.
So everybody, I hope you've enjoyed tonight's production. I want to give a huge shout out to Andrea Gutierrez, who's backstage and helping us out, doing an amazing job. We want Roxanne Carrasco to get better very, very soon. And again, join us for The Surface Monday, February the 8th at 5 o'clock. Everybody, thank you for joining us this evening. Everyone have a beautiful evening.
Thank you.
Good night.